And I told you all of this story to emphasize one thing. This entire time, the idea of hypnosis was centered on the idea of spirituality, starting with the Egyptians, the Roman period with this idea of religion and so forth, and later the idea of the mind. Incidentally, people always ask me, well, what about psychology? How come they're not hypnotists? Well, one of the people that had a lot to do with the founding of psychology was, of course, Freud, Sigmund Freud. And he was a hypnotist because he was interested in neurosis. And he learned hypnosis from a French hypnotist, another neurologist called Jean-Martin Charcot in France, in Paris. So he went to Paris to study hypnotism with Charcot. He learned hypnosis and went back to Vienna, another physician from Vienna, and started practicing hypnotism. But it's an interesting fate of history, He wrote several papers, of course, Freud, and in all of his papers, we extract 3 different comments as to why he thought we shouldn't continue using hypnosis. The first comment that he made against the use of hypnosis for therapy was, it doesn't work for everyone. I find that comment to be so ironic because nowadays, according to published data, the success rate of hypnosis for therapy is higher than the success rate of conventional talk therapy. I mentioned all of the studies in my latest book, but this is according to their data, not my data. It's higher, 63% versus 50%. But Freud said, well, it doesn't always work. Okay, what do you know of that always works for everything? Nothing does. Okay, second, he said something interesting. He says, well, sometimes you hypnotize a person, they get better, but later the symptom returns. Well, have you ever taken a painkiller? Like you buy them at the store, you take one, the pain goes away, then the pain comes back. That doesn't prevent us from buying another one later. So, yeah, that could be true. But the third comment that Freud made is the one that baffles me the most. He says, you know what? There's something too mystical about hypnosis as a form of therapy. Now, this was at the turn of the century, between the 19th and 20th century. And that was the era, anti-religion era, because science, as you know it today, science as in the scientific method, was a nascent, was a new baby that had to be protected. And all of the philosophers of the time were doing their best to separate scientific endeavors from religious or spiritual endeavors, because they thought, look, if we keep on mixing the two, science is never going to take off. And Ernst Mach, the guy you know from the engineer, the physicist, he was a philosopher, and all of them were writing papers advocating for this split between spirituality and science. And Freud, of course, was writing at that time, and he says, look, this is a bit too mystical here, so let's separate these two things. Let's do something a little bit more scientific. And he came up with pseudo-hypnosis, aka free association and psychoanalysis. But the rest is history, right? That was transformed. Later the behaviorists developed psychology into something a little bit different. And the most awesome thing that happened, I think, is the beginning in Germany of this idea of experimental psychology. Wundt was a big figure in that beginning, where they began to study people in the laboratory. How do people actually work, the mind and the senses and so forth. So experimental psychology, a great field of study in the 20th century.